Hey everyone, this is Karen with Naturally with Karen, and we're live again talking today a little bit about what they're not really letting you know about the thyroid epidemic. Thyroid issues are all over the place. Not only are they epidemic, meaning everywhere you turn, I hear someone telling me they have hypo or hyperthyroidism or they've got autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's or Graves, and I feel for people. However, I'm going to turn this extra light off here because it's pretty bright on here. That might be a little bit better, a little bit more realistic, right? Okay, so people start to feel too hot or too cold. They've got too much weight or too little weight. Okay. They've got hardly any energy at all, or they're just buzzing around all over the place and almost frenetic. And it's pretty obvious to me that we all seem to have some level of thyroid imbalance. Why is that? I mean, all of us just happen to have thyroid issues, the majority of us. For what reason? Why are they pandemic, which just means why are they worldwide? They're in Africa, Australia, Asia, although they're far less in Japan, and I'll tell you why in one of our other live streams that has to do about how I use molecular level ingredients in food, because it'd be too much for today. Not that I'm hiding anything from you, but if you are always having cold hands and feet, your thyroid isn't able to utilize its thyroid hormone to make chemical messengers to go through your body and to do what it needs to do to circulate blood, to clean your blood in the liver, to filter through your blood in the kidneys and circulate it, to pump blood through your heart. I mean, the human body is not something that is such a great rocket science mystery. It's actually pretty basic. In fact, just like we look at our brain, juxtapose the modern day laptop computer, and we say it's got RAM or memory and it stores files, the same way we look at these big words that we use for the brain, like it's our frontal cortex, right? Like the big mat that goes over and takes all the signals, the neurotransmitters. And we look at a vehicle or a car or a truck, in the human body. You know, we have these parts for the car and locomotion, how we get going. The fuel that you put into the car is like the fuel you put into your body. I'm going to take a sip of my chai. Let's get into it because I can make this short, sweet, and to the point. I put together a book. It's on my thumbnail, okay? Detox and Heal Your Thyroid. And it stirred up a little bit of controversy because here is an anatomically correct copy of a woman's breasts, and you can see that her thyroid is highlighted. Okay? 20-something years ago, I didn't even know what a thyroid gland was, let alone all that it did for us. You'll hear people talking about how it's your master gland, and you'll hear me in my book talking about it like it's your thermostat. Because if my son is hyperthyroid and I'm hypothyroid, it means his is fast and mine's running slow. Think of it like the idle on a car. It means that he's going to feel warm much more quickly. He's going to want to take his jacket and his layers off, you know, at the end of fall or early, not quite winter yet. I'm not going to rush things. But that's how we're going to experience life differently. Okay. So I put together this book called Detox and Heal Your Thyroid only after many, many years of doing research. And I'm going to show you a couple things that came on my path. You know, early on, I started learning that why were all of my clients that would come to me for wellness and coaching and massage, why would they all seem to be, like a large amount of them, seem to be taking Synthroid, which is a synthetic thyroid hormone? And then I dug a little deeper and I went, wait a minute, This is actually in the top 5 medications being dispensed for people right now. Why is that? And what is Synthroid or levothyroxine, as you might know it? Excuse me, I'm a little clogged up. I ate a real jungle peanut kind of a cookie thing I made. One moment. Why are so many people taking Synthroid and levothyroxine? Why are so many people today suffering from bipolar? Well, let's not get off tangent, which is really easy for me to do. First, I read books like this, Thyroid Mind Power. And I want to show you because this book is written by Dr. Shames, and because his mother-in-law and his entire family felt so responsible for different things that happened to them and the stories they heard from other people, which is exactly how I felt. My clients were telling me stories about how their children had to go to Miller Dwan. They didn't know how to handle the excessive anxiety. They didn't know why. They didn't want to get up to go to school in the morning. And I said, I'm struggling from the same things. So Dr. Shames, S-H-A-M-E-S, put together an entire thyroid clinic in California, which is where I'm born and raised, a native 42 years, in the Bay Area. And he put together an entire thyroid clinic because his 65-year-old mother-in-law, if I remember the story right, it's many years ago, it was 2014. I read this book right when it came out, and many before and many, many after it. But that one sticks out, and that's one that I keep on my bookshelf in case you ever want to read it, because there's little stories about how different people experienced it. So that gave me the understanding or the understanding of what other people were going through, particularly the mental and emotional issues that thyroid was producing for them if they ate the standard American diet and if they started to self-medicate. So let's keep going. Later, I picked up on Dr. Brownstein and immediately bought his book when it first came out. And I'll show you that, okay? It's kind of bent up here. Well, this one isn't bent up. I have 2 copies of it. This one's called Overcoming Thyroid Disorders by Dr. Brownstein. And I got that book and I could not put it down because I realized that someone very close to me in my family had recently been diagnosed with thyroid cancer around this time and told they had 3 to 5 years to live, and that more and more people in my family were developing avoidant behaviors. Avoidant means what? Generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, all the way to agoraphobia. And my uncle, who's now deceased, Don Pringle, actually was diagnosed with throat and thyroid cancer, told he had 6 months to live, lived another 20 years, and then shot himself in the head with depression because we were never really addressing why this is happening to us. We are just medicating over it. So stay with me because I got more. This is going to get good. This is going to answer a lot of your questions. And I'm going to get you on to exactly what you need to do because I've been working with people thousands of hours a year and really having good success. Now, as I got deeper and deeper into understanding, right, what was going on with people and what Dr. Brownstein and many others had to say about iodine, I realized that I had lived really close to the ocean. And I started to figure out myself, I and my son, until almost the age of 7, before we moved to Minnesota, where there's almost no iodine in the soil, I realized I was getting iodine through the ocean mist. We were living maybe a half of a city block away from the ocean on Cliff Street in Santa Cruz. And it was such a beautiful place. But, you know, a lot of what's going on in our world that has to do with money and escalating real estate prices in beautiful places drove a lot of us natives out, right? Like that's been the story. So then I picked up another book, and one of many that I've read about iodine, and I read this one, okay? And as I started reading and reading more and more and working with actual people, I started teaching thyroid workshops. And in 2017, I taught a class at the Whole Foods in Duluth, Minnesota called Thyroid Madness because I thought, how many people think this is all in their head when really their thyroid is compromised and it's producing a lot of anxiety and depression all the way to bipolar. And I'm not saying every case of bipolar, but people were going into classic mental illness patterns that they really honestly could have avoided. So not only were they getting hot and cold, right? But even my hyperthyroid, or people that had had a slowed down, sluggish thyroid for a long time, they started having cold hands and feet. Their extremities were still freezing. They'd get on the massage table, and even though I knew that they had been slow for so many years, and I'd hear their stories, and I want you to understand that when you hear people's stories, you're doing it with complete confidentiality. You're doing it with compassion. But I kept hearing some of the same stories over and over again. I kept hearing about suiciding siblings. I kept hearing about siblings that ended up having a lot of sexual and confusion type issues, okay? I started hearing about people whose family members, had extreme difficulties with depression and just started really avoiding getting out in public, okay? So, and then they started to happen inside of my own family, even with members that are younger than myself today. What happens after that is part of why we see so much addiction today, is because then we start self-medicating. We've been taught there's a pill for that or a potion for that. I named my book Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, and I put the breast on the cover. We're considering changing the cover because for some people it's offensive, even though this is an anatomically correct copy of a woman in her breasts, because of the high correlation between fibrin-based diseases and breast cancer. And I thought women in particular are going to see the value in this book because it will help you to prevent, possibly even reverse that, okay? Dr. Brownstein actually spoke to that somewhat when he talked about detoxifying cysts, nodules, and tumors from the body. Now, there's been studies done in Japan. There's been lots of different studies that have gone on that basically said that if you were a cigarette smoker, you were elevating the incidence of your hypothyroidism by 42% simply being a cigarette smoker. Have a good day, Anthony. Okay. Now, doctors were simply having people do blood testing, blood serum testing, from the crook of your arm. And they were only taking a TSH test, which stands for your thyroid stimulating hormone. And pardon me, I realize some of you that are listening have become quite thyroid savvy, but I'm actually making a series of thyroid YouTube live streams because not everyone is. So if you bear with me, you'll get to the much more advanced as well, because I've gone quite a long journey when it comes to thyroid. I took a serious 3-year time out and worked to get my book out there because I feel that it gives a person the honest to God, step-by-step means to heal themselves the majority of the time, okay? So now, we don't want to test just our TSH. So in my book, I ask you to get a dollar store composition book, one of those with the lines on it. I've got a kind of a cutesy, 2 of them that are kind of cutesy over here that don't look like your average stereotypical book, but I'll just kind of show you because this is what I get. And these are $1 a piece over at Dollar Tree. And they've got the lines on them so you can kind of keep your information. And here's another one. There's little ones and big ones, So get something kind of cute that you're really gonna, look at this one. Stuff is happening. Isn't that cute? Okay. So get yourself something kind of cute that you're going to do the steps, step by step, that I give you in the book. The steps I give you in the book are going to be super simple. Anyone can do them. I don't use too many big words in the book, and if I do, I describe them. Anywhere where I have gotten information from other people, my integrity is 100%, and I've given you the sources I got them from. I credit them out of respect. Okay? So that's kind of what the book's about. I just want to say a couple of things. I'm going to put my reading glasses on for the notes I took here. Okay. So Dr. Brownstein indicates in his book that most of the time the medical community had no idea of what thyroid hormones were actually doing, and that most of the testing for thyroid hormones was actually, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, was actually making an inference. They were inferring what these thyroid hormones were doing, okay? So people all have different scenarios because we eat differently, we take different supplements, we live on different ground, we have different stress levels, but essentially we're all the same. Okay? Just like a vehicle is basically made the same way, the human body is basically very much the same. Okay? But we've had different circumstances, way of life, exposures, treatments, etc. So those all have to be considered. So that takes the element of mystery out of things. You have a thyroid, I have a thyroid. We all have a thyroid unless you've had a thyroidectomy or your thyroid has been radiated out. Okay. So different scenarios, different length of issues. When yours maybe started giving you trouble, might be different than someone else. I also want to bring up more and more people, because I'm not against cannabis. In fact, I use it in my coaching in terms of, suggesting that people have used it, especially for Parkinson's, neurological issues, lots of things. But I'm a big proponent of not smoking and vaping for the same reason that the 42% increase in cigarette smoking caused more of an incidence of hypothyroidism. So cannabis smoking and vaping might not be in your best interest, whereas a RSO, a Rick Simpson's oil, or an edible might be much better suggestion for you. Okay. 2 studies I want to mention is 1999 with Stengel, that thyroid issues were highly correlated with cobalt deficiencies. There's a Gupta study on the role of ascorbic acid and cadmium. There's Revalia did a blood micronutrient and thyroid hormone connection study. So I'm going to put that to the side, and now I'm going to read you a little section from the back, the teeny tiny part of the book here on overcoming thyroid disorders by Dr. Brownstein. And he basically says, one of the main reasons the thyroid gland can malfunction is from exposure to heavy metals, including mercury, lead, cadmium, arsenic, and nickel. These agents poison enzyme systems throughout the body and decrease the normal functioning of various organs and glands, including the thyroid gland. Detoxifying the body and removing these harmful elements can vastly improve the overall picture of one's health. Okay? We're exposed to a variety of chemicals and pollutants every single day. These agents are in our food, as in pesticides, in our homes, our household cleaners, in our environment, in the petrochemicals that we're using. Our body has to process all of these chemicals and remove these harmful substances from our system. Our bodies remove toxic substances in a variety of ways, including urination, defecation, breathing, and sweating. And the liver is our largest organ, and its primary responsibility is to remove toxic elements from the body. The liver utilizes a 2-stage process that renders chemicals harmless and then secretes them out of the body via the urine or the stool. Now, I could keep going, but he's got another section here that's very short at the end of the book on heavy metal toxicity. Now, I'm a geek. I have been devouring natural health and healing for upwards of 34 years, starting in around 1984 with a course that I paid $900 for with Pamela Masters on raw foods and reversing cancer. And once I was lit with that insight, I went on to herbalism and massage and Kemetic yoga, and almost 16 years of doing massage and coaching. You learn a lot, thousands of hours a year. I thought to myself, I read book after book after book, and it was good for me to figure out why we had a thyroid issue, or to hear Dr. Shames's book about why Some people had different experiences when their thyroid wasn't functioning well. And I lived it through my family, and I lived it through becoming cystic nodular on my own thyroid. I had a thyroid ultrasound. But after teaching the workshops and hearing more and more stories, and I've got a box like this of thousands of client confidential health and wellness intakes for their first appointment. So I've seen thousands and thousands of people. And yet I didn't have a virtual presence, a YouTube. I felt kind of intimidated to get on social media. I'm 57. I'm close to 60. I'll be 58 this next coming year. And I just didn't really feel like it was all that important. But people started saying, I really wish you would, because we want something that we can read quickly, that is super simple, that makes good sense. And so let me tell you what my chapter names are here in the book, okay? The chapter names are Why Detox. So I give you a quick little blurb why it's super important, because you didn't hear the YouTube video that I'm giving you here today. Why do we have thyroid problems? I go into the mercury, the radiation, and the other reasons, where they are, why they are. Nobody wants to read a whole book about that. Most people don't want to pick up a book and read about their thyroid until they realize it controls everything. All of your hormones, your brain, everything. And then you're like, I think I better read about my thyroid, especially if it's as interesting as this, because you're going to really get to the reasoning. I go into the multi-generational aspects of thyroid imbalance because as a coach or a shaman, we're looking towards what happened to great-grandmother, grandmother, mom, and now you, and now your children. How do they look different with those multiple generations? I'm looking at stress and thyroid as another chapter. Gut health in your thyroid. The diagnosis, treating, and medications is another chapter. Preparing to detox. You don't want to just jump in and, oh my God, you've got diarrhea for the next 2 weeks. You can't function. You need to go to work or go to school. I'm going to prepare you. So nothing in here is, you don't have to drink, clay concoctions all day long and, sit on the toilet. This is really simple to do. Foods is the next chapter, number 8. Foods to avoid during detox. Number 9. Detox is actually a lifestyle. It's not something you have to do that's, menacing and grimacing. Detox and mind-body medicine, which is a big part of what I do with my coaching, is I'm listening and taking notes in my little composition book when we're meeting together face-to-face. So I can know and hear some of the words and some of the things that you're using, so I can come back and say, I think this might be an issue there. What do you think? And they'll go, yeah, gosh, I'm so glad you picked up on that. After that, I've got iodine and the different supplements. Healing your thyroid, chapter 12. Number 13, prevention, because you might have younger generations that you like to prevent them from maybe what you went through. Maybe you went into lupus or Graves or Hashimoto's, right? Maybe you went into such extensive fibroids that you ended up hysterectomized. Maybe you had such extensive, fibrocystic breast disease that the doctors put you on tamoxifen, and you inherently know that taking a chemotherapeutic drug is probably not a good idea. And the last story is my story. I shared my story, and I'd love to read it with you one day, because my story was, I went through a lot to learn what I learned about thyroid. Not only the thousands upon thousands of hours on a yearly basis that I shared with you, the thyroid workshops, the thyroid classes, all the books that I read for many, many, many years, the family issues that presented, but my hair got really thin. I had panic attacks. I went through a lot. And I said to myself, now I've become someone who's a wise elder who has medicine to bring in a way that I know that people can hear it and they can get help for themselves with this book. Okay. If you can't get help for yourselves, you're just, buying a book and making somebody else a sale. But there's a difference between making a sale, and that's why I hear back from people that buy and read my book, and they come back and say, I want to do some coaching with you because I want to, even if it's 4 or 6 sessions, I want to fine tune what I'm doing and work on just me so I don't end up with cancer, so I don't end up with autoimmune, so I don't end up with preventable problems. And that's why I shared with you my doggy superfood bowls yesterday, because I realized I wasn't really meeting the needs of the pack, the dogs that I live with, the 3, if I wasn't really getting some molecular level food into, iodine and detoxification into their food, instead of just handing them meat and maybe some supplements. I needed to also, So if you go to my Naturally with Karen Facebook page, you're going to see that later today I'm going to post how I soaked organic dried chickpeas last night. I got up and I rinsed them and strained them in my little ceramic colander that I got for $1 at a yard sale, put them in my crock pot, put my molecular level iodine in there, and those will be fed to the dogs, myself, and my family. Okay, so there's easy ways to do this. When I started off with the raw foods for reversing cancer, I then took just a slew of courses through Bread of Life in 1984 forward, and Staff of Life in Santa Cruz, and really learned how to make food as medicine. So I've got over 30 years as a raw food and vegan, or now what I say, a plant-based, because I do use honey and I use other things. I'm a plant-based chef and nutritionist and herbalist, and someone who's just actually worked hands-on in what I call original medicine. I invite you to get the book. And how will you get the book? You can go to naturallywithkaren.com and you can go to my shop. You'll see the book right there as an ebook, less than $20, less than 5 minutes. It'll be in your email. You click on it and you start reading. And I really hope that after you read it and after you help yourself, that you send me a message and let me know, hey, I wanted to connect with you. I saw your live stream, or I got a hold of your book, and I'm recommending it to people because, man, people need this. Most of the reason you see people getting their thyroids radiated out is because they never fed their thyroid the electricity it needed. And I give you all of that in the book. I can't give you a 5-hour live stream right now, but you could buy the book and you can sit down, and I guarantee you can read that book easily in a weekend, especially on your computer. Just read it over one time, like I tell you in the book. Read it the first time. Get yourself, one of these cutesy notebooks for $1 at the dollar store. I get about 10 of them when I go at a time, because every time I work with someone like you, I write your name, the date we're together, and I keep the notes, because nobody wants to feel like they're repeating themselves session after session. I want to be meticulous with your time, your money, and your energy, and get you top-notch coaching from a real shaman. So that's it. Again, one last time I'm going to show you the cover of my book, Detox. Let's see if I can get it into a better. Detox and Heal Your Thyroid. It's also available on Amazon if you really are, some people really like to hold a book and have a book that they can hold in their hands and take with them to work or whatever they're doing. So I want to thank you very much. If you have questions, please write them down below. If they're coaching level questions, you can schedule an appointment with me by going to naturallywithkaren.com, and there's a form that you fill out one time and you click submit. It goes to me. We schedule anywhere from a 15, 30 to a 45 minute. 45 minute is the standard if you really want to cover some ground. Or you can read the book for less than $20 and really be on your way. Great Christmas present for other people too, especially if they're in autoimmune. They want to get pregnant, any number of things. All right. Thank you so much. And I hope you've enjoyed this. And I look forward to seeing you more often. I've got a lot of medicine to bring from all of my life, all of my journeys, being so passionate about this, being an original medicine woman. And I really do welcome you to subscribe to my channel. I look forward to getting to know you.